Welcome to another edition of Strange New Pod. I am your supreme leader, Giraffe,
Hmm.
alongside the best maroon found family this side of City Alpha 5. I am joined, like now for what, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, by my
Hmm.
Ivan Hawk, who knows that those eels would make perfect sushis, right?
Yeah, like fugu, you know, it's
Definitely a food source
deadly,
that we can.
deadly but delicious.
Deadly but delicious, exactly. And we have a special guest tonight, the Delmonda to my con, Jesse Earl.
I will take that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think you're more the con to my Delmonda, but
Really?
I have a little bit of more chaos on your side now.
I guess, but I guess I feel like I'm like stuck up like studying documents and trying to add nuance to historical discussions. I don't know. I guess, yeah.
All right, so I was right the first time. How are you
Hmm.
doing, Jesse? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I am here. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited to talk about this show actually because I know it's not getting a lot of attention, but it's fantastic. I really like it. I have some issues with these two episodes in particular that we'll talk about, but overall I'm loving it. So excited to talk about
Yeah,
it.
you've been, I think, for 5 weeks telling me, get me on the
I
podcast.
know I have,
Get
and
me
then
on the
you
podcast.
invite me on in the way. I guess it's good because it'll be like a place where I could talk about many different things. But like the episode where I finally have like a major issue is the one I get to be on. uh,
So we're here today to review the episode 6 and 7 because I was out last week of Star Trek
Um,
Con. The good of all, and I am Marla. We didn't think this in advance. Like it's just the fluke of the calendar that we are reviewing these two episodes together. But what perfect episodes to review together! I will say
mhm,
that.
hmm
mhm.
Absolutely great episode to review together. But before we dive in, Hawk, please, can you thank our amazing patron collective at the Ready Room level and above?
Absolutely. Thanks once again to Simon Stager, Jeff Reeve, Tallulah, Jen Stein, Tina Alexander, Joe Saporito, Kang Wee, Takako Nagumo, Fernando Nogales, SMK, Colin Davidson, Shatterhand 2049, Jesco, Michael Graham, Emily and Travis, Maggie Light, Wayne Ritz, Scone of Arc, Sean, Jay Howard, Mahalani Uchiyama, Matt Harker, Joshua Lewis, Tara Pollen, Slope 74, Rude Parakeet, Adam Sanders, Amy the Magic Snail, Aaron W., Carl Angoli, Michael Kwan, Caitlin, Elizabeth Dean, Jim McMahon, Sedano 317, Puka Hair, Three Fries Short, Cat Tip, Tripping the Reed Alert over a Pineapple, Sean Manning, Asher at the Bat, Chris Waterman, RHCB, Martin Simpson, Norman Buckwald, David Prime Hildebrand, Taryn J. Robinson, Rob Grinner, Eric the Red, Trouble, Jamie Roberts, Honeyberry, Paul Taylor Pitt, Brett Jones, Michelle P., Margin Walker 82, Melissa Bartell, Jesse Robbins, Kim, Chris Finoglio, Felix Dax, Kelly McKinnon, Chief Petty Officer Snuggles, and Lisa Moore. Thank
And
you.
And of
You
course, a big thank to our Badmirals, our EPs, who are building a ship for us to get the fuck out of here. Simon Steger, Chris Mederman, Tara Poland, Brad Jones, Dana, Matt Harker, Jim McMahon, Maggie Light, and Beth. Thank you for your support. Do we have news? We do have news. They appeared on my outline. This is magical. Julian will be at, is it PAX or PAX? Do we know?
Axe.
PAX.
Pop,
PAX Unplugged next month.
packs, poop,
Huh?
pooks.
Pooks?
Oof.
PAX Unplugged next month. Make sure to check out our coverage. Also, the penultimate episode of Strange New Adventures playing the STA starter campaign just dropped on our Patreon. It will drop for everybody else on Tuesday and live for the finale a week from Sunday. So many content. Jesse, do you have any news?
Do I have any news? Yeah, I mean, I just on my Jesse Jenner YouTube channel, I just released a 4 hour long video going over the many issues with Star Trek Strange New World Season 3. And on Nebula, the streaming service that has a bunch of my other stuff, I just released a video early there about why tech oligarchs love and misunderstand Star Trek. That'll be coming out on YouTube in the next 2-3 weeks. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, no news for me personally. I'm gonna rest after coming back from San Francisco, where I was at the Wild Hunt Fable.
Ooh.
Thank you to the Never Tame Productions for inviting me. It was fun. Now I need to sleep for 2 months at least. No more things. No more things. Home, 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 home. I've decided to not do a strange new loop because we're gonna talk about a lot of different things, and I don't want for Eric and Julian to do 3 hours of post prod. They're gonna hate on me a little bit. So let's just dive in. On episode 6 and 7, we are on the dying SETI Alpha 5. The augments need to shift yet again their plans and adapt to the new conditions and the new underwater cave that Delmonda and the Elboreans have graciously indicated to them. Question mark. Death, hope, grief, new lives, and new beginnings, or even new ends, become intertwined in these two episodes. We're gonna review those two episodes together by theme. So, spoiler starting now. If you've not, I was gonna say watch. If you've not listened to the two episodes, stop now and come
Khan
back
gets defeated by Kirk in the end.
Yeah, Kirk
Exactly.
comes back.
Yes.
Just to spoil y'all.
You know what? It was the Gorns all along.
Spock dies
Again.
I'm just spoiling Wrath
Been
of
there,
Khan is what
done
I'm
that.
saying.
So I've organized this episode in like big themes and that we're gonna talk together, and I want to start by speaking about Ivan because
Mm.
we've been we've been speculating a lot about Ivan these last episodes from his unchecked violence, with his inability to understand what Khan wants anymore, which
Mhm.
was slowly inching Ivan towards this plot mover, I will call him. This plot starter, right?
Shit
Uh,
stir.
Problem.
starter.
I
But
called it definitely a few episodes back. He's a problem.
he's a
Mhm.
problem, right? But into set 2 episode, we're gonna see the death of the brotherhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ivan, my brother. So, first of all, in episode 6, we witnessed the traumatizing, I will say, murder of Secunda, the Elborean, by Ivan. We knew it was coming, right? Since
Mhm.
Hugo's death, I don't know what you think, but we've talked a lot with Hawk about how Ivan and his unchecked violence was such a liability. Um, First of all, that scene of the murder of Segunda was incredibly made on sound design.
Mhm.
What did you think of this scene, real fast? Jesse, we're gonna start with you.
I mean, it's God. I mean, I just thought it was kind of brutal. It was just, I was like, wow, this is dark for this, and they managed to do it really, really well with the sound design, like that. And I think it needed to be that for what they were trying to sell with Ivan, like of how just cruel and
Mm.
really just mean he really is. So
Yeah, especially like in this episode 7 when Delmonda asked, "Do you want to see the mark of Ivan's boot in
yeah, in his
Giga's skull?"
skull. I was
And I
like,
was like,
Jesus.
"Oh,
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
hot,
That's some R-rated Star Trek right there.
right?" Ugly
It,
between of that scene.
again, big ups to the audio design like for this. It really brings you into the scene and that. Like, there was a point when I was listening, I was like, oh my god, he already killed him in that. And then I realized, oh no, it's like he was just admiring. He's like, you do know how to bleed and that. It's like, do you know how to die? And he just went further and further into it. And the
Honestly,
Elborean meekly crying like hungry.
Yeah,
yeah.
the sound design of the show, like the whole show is just so well produced.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just shocked by it. They had on Trek Culture, they interviewed the composers for the show, and I didn't really even realize they had like independent composers for this. And it's like they went all out on this. Like I'm really impressed with how far they've gone on this thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that scene that was like incredibly well designed because then it
Mm-hmm.
make me
Yeah, you have this
grossed
a
out.
visceral reaction to it. Yeah, you can't help
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah, and the voice actor was also really good. Like we could hear his joy
Mm.
and like sadism in the murder of that random Elborean that
Mm-hmm.
didn't do anything to him. Anyway, back to Ivan's
You
arc.
just love the sound of death.
It was I think it participates a lot to why I love that show
Mm-hmm.
is that it really brings me in that sound environment of City Alpha 5 and even on like in this scene. I think that without like those crush and those like smash and all this, that the murder would not have been as shocking.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
Mm.
yeah, and then I
Well,
think it participates also on how we read the second episode and what happens with Ivans and
mm-hmm.
Delmonda and all that, which we're gonna talk about it right now, actually.
Well, I just on that point, just to say too, this is why I like audio dramas as a medium. I've like talked about this a lot about why I particularly love audio dramas. Is because you have to participate in the creation of it in your head.
Yeah.
Like, unlike, I love film. Obviously, I'm a filmmaker, but a lot of that is like people presenting it to you and you
Hmm.
just kind of passively watch. Or books, which like obviously have some level of like there's one person you're reading, but you have to do all the kind of work in your head of voices and everything. Like there's such this interesting inflection of like you have actors, you have music, you have all these sound designs. Like there's still like a very collaborative thing to make this, and yet there's even more participation on the listener's part to like have to interpret how what this looks like. And I think that like that makes like it's why I love horror audio dramas in particular, because you have to like imagine the thing you can imagine is almost always scarier than the thing you actually see. So audio dramas do that really well, but here too, in this like violent act, like you have to like really imagine how violent he's being, and that can almost be more disturbing than anything they could have just showed you.
Absolutely. Also, because when you killed Hugo, you didn't have that much
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So Ivan's arc really runs parallel to Khan's, in my opinion. They're both driven by pride. They're both convinced they're right. So is betrayal, which would we call that a betrayal, is not only political but it's very emotional, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
death of trust. We even see Ursula conspiring a little bit with him when he
Mm-hmm.
decides to take Khan down. Like if you strike a king, you'd better not miss.
Mm-hmm.
So after the murder of Secunda, Ivan is detained. Let's say detained
Yes.
by the
Mm-hmm.
Elborean, and then put back into the care question quotation mark
Mm-hmm.
of Khan. Did you sympathize with Ivan at any point, or did you just cross a line that is beyond redemption, Jesse?
I really had no sympathy for this guy. I mean, he functions as like as you said, like a plot mover, but also like a counterpoint to Khan, right? Like he is Khan if he didn't change at all and was just this like might makes right power guy. So he's there to function for like those reasons in the story, but as like a sympathetic character, not I really don't. He's overly cruel and overly mean, and it's you could argue that it goes a little bit far. I think it kind of works for me in that Star Trekian kind of way of like archetypes and being very dramatic. Especially like Khan is a very dramatic, like Shakespearean kind of character. So like I think he fits within this world, but as like a character that I sympathize with, not really, especially at this point in the story. I'm like, no, he just tortured this poor thing like to death. So like, no, fuck him at a certain point. At least in terms of my level of empathy for him
You're
as a
not,
character.
see, you're not Delmonda.
Well, I mean,
That's it.
in the real world, like I get yes, but as like a person listening to him as like a
Mm.
character, yeah, fuck him. Yeah,
Fuck.
yeah.
I totally agree. There wasn't a moment I really felt sympathy for him because, like, he's, as I said, he's been continually a problem. He's a reflection. He's the dark mirror of Khan, that what Khan, could be. But I also think in like these two episodes, we see like the side of Khan that directly kind of, you know, like conflicts with Ivan and the way he thinks
Mm-hmm.
and that. Like I know they both grew up, the way they both grew up and the way that their lives went in that like war, constant war. And Ivan, he's a blunt tool. Whereas Khan, you can see him almost starting to evolve in those over these next two episodes now. Whereas Ivan just regresses. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he misinterpret. He doesn't even misinterpret his orders. He was told to observe them, but he thinks it's like Khan wants me to go out and look for weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And when he finds an opportunity to act on it, it's just base. You know.
I feel okay. So maybe it's because it's I don't know. I feel bad. I feel weird being the kind one here, but
Oh no, this is
I
different.
I felt for him a little bit. Not that I think he should be, I'm tired of redemption arcs, like fuck Ivan, right? But also, that's also the tragedy of the augments. They were literally brainwashed into being a tool of oppression, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Ivan was that for Khan until Khan decided that it's not what he wanted to do, but he never actually like sat with Ivan and be like, "Hey, my man, we're not killing people anymore. I know I've sent you to kill millions and millions nonstop, and your whole life and your whole thing and your whole relationship to me and your whole um like value to me was that, and now I shift totally the conversation, but I've not helped you move towards something else. If you convince somebody is a hammer, then everything is a nail, and
Mm-hmm.
until you said so, like, it will not be able to change. And I think that's also when Delmonda speaks about, reformation, redemption, reintroduction to society, the question of trauma, the question of healing him, because he's sick, right? He's being tortured by the situation himself. That I was like, yeah, Khan also kind of like disposes of him
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't serve him anymore, which made me a little bit. Listen, just like
No, I
yeah,
mean, I think
much.
yes, I think that because I mean, that's the thing that was the most interesting to me was the Elboreans' argument of like restorative justice,
Mm.
which I found that to be a really interesting, like that was the most interesting part of this because like Ivan himself kind of comes across a little more cartoonish, but there is this thing, and I loved the way the show put it. It was 2 episodes ago, so it wasn't in our batch of episodes, but this like lack of imagination on Khan's part.
Mm.
I love that concept of like the limits of his imagination, the limits of how he's able to like really think. Like even in his conversation with Ivan here, like
Yeah.
where he's confronting Ivan, Khan even like couches his like working with the Elboreans as I'm going to betray them later. This isn't really a betrayal of who I am. And there's a part of me that almost wonders, if what happens at the end of this episode with like Marla, as we'll get to later, didn't happen, like is Khan saying that just almost a justification to himself to like say this is still who I am, is a way to like say it to Ivan. It's like, no, this is truly who I am. You just don't see the greater vision. And it's like he's not really recognizing how much he has been starting to push beyond like what he has been told. But it does bring back to your point of like his imagination is starting to be expanded by his encountering with the Elboreans, by Marla, and Ivan has not had that. He has not had that anyone offer that to him, whereas Khan should have been the one to do that. But Khan is just not a leader in a position to offer that right now because he doesn't have that emotional intelligence either. And so yeah, I agree with you. Like Ivan's perspective is understandable, even though I don't have a lot of sympathy for his actions or what he does. Like, you understand where he's coming from and where he's gotten there and why he is such an interesting contrast to Khan and Khan's journey and how far Khan is going to be able to go. And the confrontation with the Elboreans about because the Elboreans are kind of representing in a way what we as the audience view what the Federation should be like, restorative justice, like growing, like trying to care for others, even those who don't want your help. And yeah, I just think that that's a really cool complicated way to like deal with all of these issues, especially with the character, an anti-hero. Like, Khan is a villain in Star Trek overall, but within the story, he kind of functions to a degree as an anti-hero until probably at the end he'll turn to full villainy by the end, as we presume. So yeah, it's an interesting way to tell this story.
Hawk?
Yeah, no, everything that Jesse just said, and moving forward.
Do you think Khan is just like a product of the 90s when it comes to therapy and just can't imagine that to be something that works?
there is some truth to that, right? When I read that question in the outline, my mind immediately to The Sopranos and that, where it's like, kind of like this thuggish, violent gang leader, and that goes to seek modern therapy, and that, and the kind of the back and forth between that, sometimes in that it worked and a lot of times it didn't. And I think
that's an interesting comparison, actually. Sorry, I didn't like comparing this to The Sopranos is fascinating. Sorry, anyways, got you.
I think everything in life kind of relates to The Sopranos at on some level. But you can see it a lot in Khan because you mentioned about Ivan and that Khan should have been that for him, maybe, but Ivan outright directly just rejects like the offers to expand his mind, adapt to the situation, look for a solution that benefits everybody. We said blunt object. I say he's a cornered animal, at this point of the story, and a cornered animal is just a dangerous person because or dangerous in all around because they only know one way to react, and that's to fight their way out of the corner. And yeah, you can see that whole arc with Ivan and that the way he made the decision to betray Khan. He saw him with Delmonda and that, and it's and the way Marla has been influencing him throughout the course of the story, and he doesn't like it. He's it's like Khan is his bro, right?
He lost his spot, basically. He's the bromance of Khan that gets kicks out because Khan has a new girlfriend.
Exactly.
We've seen this over and over again.
You've changed, man. You've changed.
You used to be cool.
Exactly.
You used to be such great little authoritarians together. Why do you have to go get lame and get emotions and stuff? I hate it.
But you used to go out and conquer nations over the weekend, man.
Speaking of Khan and his relationship to Ivan, he decides to exile him after this whole conversation where he explains that it is all a trick, right? It is all like gaining Delmonda's trust. So he's breaking that trust, and Ivan is sent into the dying Seti Alpha 5 screaming, Khan! Khan! What do you think of the choice of exile? And I'm gonna put out there that we know it's a plot point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the Ivan's gonna come back and cause some shit? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The plot mover, right? But
Yeah.
what did you think of Khan choosing exile? Did you see that coming? What do you think it says about Khan at this point in the story, Jesse?
I mean, this is why it's hard to talk about this in isolation without talking about what comes a little bit later, but I'll try to.
You can go talk.
Well, I mean, like the whole thing of the story is that Khan has slowly been moving by someone like Marla, and also the Elboreans a little bit to be more to be a better man, to like actually grow as a leader and actually be the kind of leader who can actually
See the big
like
picture, having
yeah,
like
be the big picture
imagination.
and like focus on something greater than just domination, control, and his own like authority, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this choice here to exile him, like I think he could have easily been, because he even says in that moment, right? He says, like, I will tell Delmonda that you tried to kill me, and she'll say it's like, oh, this is a good sign of your growth or whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but again, I sort of wonder at like, is that true, or is he just saying that because it's what he needs to justify to try to hold on to this identity that he's still struggling with? And I it's why I'm disappointed by where this ends with Marla, and I'll get to that. We'll talk a little bit more later, but I think that's just such an easy way to kind of make him regress, of
Mm-hmm.
like shoving her out of the way, because I think there's so much more in that push and pull that you could have dealt with, of like drawing out how much is he like trying to hold on to this identity and keep on and like justify it to himself, versus like how he is earnestly changing. So we'll get to that more a little bit later, but like
Yeah.
I really wanted like that to be interrogated more, and it maybe still will be, but I feel like the apparatus for that has been kind of thrown away, as we're going to be like, and now he's turning back to being evil Khan. You know what I mean? So
Hawk, do you think it's also because Khan needs to become the Khan of the Wrath of Khan? Or
I mean, I think people might like mistakenly interpret like exile as him taking influence from Delmonda, but honestly, I thought it was so much more cruel of him, to do to Ivan than that. All like Ivan made his move, he betrayed him, he failed. You go at the king, you best not miss, and all he wanted was a clean death after that, right? This
mm-hmm.
hurt him even more, to be exiled, like cast out after everything that they've been through. And that I found it infinitely worse punishment than just a simple death, which is something Khan could have done, lickety split, right? No,
yeah.
he really wanted this to hurt, and we know like Khan does not handle betrayal well. There's
Mm-hmm. It's
been
all about his own ego, right? Yeah.
it's his ego, and I think a lot of it's like the way like he was raised, like we've seen like glimpses of like his childhood, like in Strange New Worlds, right? Locked, basically like raised the same way as Homelander, and look how well that worked out,
Ooh. Yeah,
right?
Hawk is doing all the parallels here,
Yeah, you
like
got some great comparisons.
The
It's awesome.
Boys, The Sopranos. Let's go. That's a great comparison,
Now I'm
actually.
just like imagining Khan having the same relationship with women as Homelander.
No.
Jesus.
But yeah, like it is interesting because we speak about Khan's ego, and I think these two episodes we really see Khan and his obsession about legacy,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it has shifted from that empire where he would be the head of the empire to basically what will survive of me once I'm gone. And I think Marla being pregnant, losing Ivan is kind of moving forward this need of legacy for Khan into these two episodes. We see scope narrow from saving all the people under my domination to saving his people to saving his own people inside of those people,
Mm-hmm.
and then to just trying to save Marla. So we also have, you were saying, like a cornered animal for Ivan, but I feel that also we see Khan moving towards this l- grieving everything he wanted to build, but also being more and more alone.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to preserve his legacy, but what is that legacy, right? Is it the people? Is it the myth? Is it the ID only of the legacy that matters? Do you think that it is during these two episodes that Khan is slowly crossing from the epic supreme leader that we've seen to more of a tragic figure, or is he still in control of his fate, in your opinion?
I mean, I think my thing is that I think he's definitely still in control of his fate. I mean, he has the Elboreans there, and he has the opportunity in front of him to like be the better man. We'll see how that turns out, whether it be like Ivan destroys everything and Khan tries to do better and then he just becomes cynical. Like there's many ways that this could still play out, but I do think there is a potential here for Khan to be the better person and to grow. And that's the challenge to him at the end of these episodes. Now, like Marla's gone, is like, what will he choose? And obviously we know that this is ultimately like gonna lead to him becoming the Wrath of Khan. So something's going to push him to become that like spiteful, resentful, like I'm going to blame someone else like Kirk for my failures sort of person. Um, which I think is kind of interesting, especially to see how we're going to get to that point and like what he's going to feel as his failure. But right now, I think he's sitting in this interesting cognitive dissonance, right? Between like, who am I? Am I this like king? I am this ruler. Am I like better than everyone else? Or can I be someone who like can work with others, can build understanding, can build a consensus, as we literally talk about here? And it's fascinating that like it's such this interesting thing because I've been writing about this in a different way. I won't go too deep into this, but I've been writing from about like the like religious pseudo religious belief that people currently have in like liberal democracy right now as we're dealing with all the authoritarian shit going on in the world right now. And Khan kind of represents that like right wing authoritarian side of like, I'm the strong man, I'm the leader, but like he's starting to be pushed more towards like, oh, we can have conversation, we can grow, we can have consensus. Um, and it's just like, which person do I want to be? And so it's kind of a more, I mean, put it in the parvalence of American politics. It's more of like a right wing sort of cognitive dissonance that I feel like a lot of liberals are going through right now. Of like, do we trust the system or do we face fascists? Like, what do we do? But it is a very similar kind of like cognitive dissonance that I think he's kind of wrestling with. And obviously, we'll know who's going to collapse it somehow into that more like authoritarian, I'm going to blame everyone else for my problems kind of way. But we don't know exactly how he gets there. And I think that part of it is kind of interesting. So.
Hawk?
Yeah, it was interesting how you were mentioning earlier about like how he's just kind of picking and choosing his battles at this point, and it seems to be
Mm-hmm.
getting smaller and smaller to a core group of people in that. And there's basically like the whole idea of his empire and his legacy, it just keeps contracting in that. And it's like a lot of it is the circumstances that are just beyond his control in that. It's like he imagined like, this planet was gonna be his, his fiefdom, and that didn't work out. And he was consigned to an underground cave. But also on the other side of that is the expansion of his own kind of his outlook on everything. Because you gotta remember in that this is also serving as like a story about first contact. It's like the Federation obviously went through that like centuries ago, but Khan's experiencing first contact and like
Yeah.
like the same way like like when the Vulcans arrived first on Earth, like how everybody must have felt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, it's it's an interesting experience. On one hand, like the ambitions that he had are being taken away from him slowly, slowly, slowly. And then on the other hand, it's like he's got, his vision has been expanded in some degree by Marla, in some degree by Delmondo, and that, like, introducing him to these values and that are traditionally, like Jesse said, associated with the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, like really willing at some point to try and adapt to circumstances. I think he has the potential there, but he's also ruled a lot by his passions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a very adaptable man.
He is. Yeah.
He's a survivor. I don't know how, but like somehow he's still here, right? But it's true that he lost Ivan. He's gonna lose Marla at the end of
Hmm.
episode 7. He also lost Ursula. We didn't talk yet about, Mado and her accident and the
Hmm.
miscarriage, but like Ursula definitely is not gonna take well the exile of Ivan, and the youth is turning towards the Elborean, right? So he's gonna be a man alone, and I think it's interesting that yes, the population, but also his geographical scope is reducing until he learns about the ship. So the Elborean are building a ship that will be able to take some people out, and that's when I think Khan starts really to be into his legacy and seeing an
Mm-hmm.
out for his future child,
Yep.
and expanding again is universe being, oh, I need to work with the Elborean right now, right? But it's, for me it was really interesting to see that in parallel, Rosalind Lear and everything she's looking into, everybody only speaks of Khan in through their own grief.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm.
never anything positive coming out, not from Sul, not from Tuvok, not from anybody. It's all about loss. It's all about that man hurt me. Um, so is it his legacy? Do you think, by the way, that his hope for the ship is sincere, or do you think it's yet one more way to manipulate everybody around him? Just real quick, because I'm not convinced that hope is really sincere about the ship.
This is I kind of this is where it's hard for me actually. Like even as someone who like empathizes and writes and tries to write characters, because it's like it's such a interesting worldview that like I get in the sense that I just don't think he trusts the Elboreans at all to make a ship for his people. Like he just does not, he cannot really conceive of any way that that's going to work out. So I don't really think he does have an earnest trust in it, but it's hard for me because it's kind of like, bro, you're on a planet that's about to like die. Like you have to like have some level of plan, and he seems to be kind of flailing in a lot of ways. And it's a little hard for me to reconcile, but it's like I also very much understand it because he is just a guy going through so much, and like asking him to have a level of trust in like someone just earnestly being willing to like help save his people, like just for the sake of it without any benefit to themselves, I think is uh I lost my train of thought there, but I was like, it's just something he can't really think of and he can't really understand, which is hard for me as someone who's like, I can get that. Um, it's just an interesting state of mind, especially given the dire stakes at the moment. So,
Hawk, what do you think?
I don't
Real
know.
hope or
I think once he heard like how many people it could actually take. I mean, I
mm-hmm.
don't think he envisions it as the hope for his people in that, but I think he does envision it as a hope for like Marla and the baby. You know, at least his legacy can live on in the stars and that. And I think it has a lot to do with the choice of the name that he chose for the child.
Mm-hmm.
wait, let's talk about the Elboreans
Yes.
because they've been my I've been obsessed with the Elboreans. I am really into whatever design they have done with these aliens that we can see, but I somehow can imagine very well.
Mm-hmm.
And they are trying to communicate, right? I will start with this, that I do not trust the Elboreans.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
I, oh, Hawk is with me on this.
Mm.
Really,
Um,
I trust him, but maybe I guess yeah.
I don't know. Like in previous episodes, I trusted them, but something about the last two, they're definitely hiding something.
okay, sorry, I have an issue with my mic apparently. So let's see if that is better. I don't see what I'm doing. I hope that is what I'm doing. Okay. There's Eric in the chat telling me my mic is too low. He's producing from afar. Yes, hidden over there. Um, so yes, no, we don't know. I hope it's good. Let's see. Um, the cohabitation, let's say, with the Elboreans is becoming more and more complicated in the idea that the Augments and the Elboreans, and there's a conversation about that between Khan and Delmonda. More and more, they're gonna start living together and
mm-hmm.
understanding one another, becoming one people, most probably. But Khan still tries to prioritize augment survival when the younger generation totally understand that they have something to gain from each other and there's still fear from the Elboreans, normal. Um, they starting to understand that a communication is possible across divides. Khan seems to be the only one still pushing for only the survival of his own people. We then learn that the Elboreans are actually going to sacrifice half their population to make sure that everybody may get a chance of survival. Uh, what did you think of this dynamic between the survival of the Elboreans parallel to the survival of the augment? Um, do you think that their self-sacrifice is shifting the moral balance of the story? Not that Khan was ever the most moral of them.
What are you talking about? Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think with the dynamic, and this is why I kind of trust the Elboreans, to a degree, is that like I think what the show is trying to get at is this like dichotomy between like fully communal, like society versus a fully individualist society, which the augments represent. Because then it because that's always kind of the push and pull, right? Between like
Yes.
how individual are we and how much do we give to the community. And Star Trek is always about like navigating that exact sort of conversation about like the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many, or the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. So it's like it's always about that constant conversation between community and individualism. And I think the Elboreans willing to self-sacrifice a lot of themselves for someone else kind of represents that. Like this is like a fully the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. You should like people will die to save the rest of them, even people who don't want their help necessarily, like the augments seem to not want to. Whereas Khan is that fully like individual, like all for one and one for all. Everything needs to serve me, my legacy, my me, and everyone else is just to facilitate what I want. Um, and so the consensus they come to, I think, is that interesting sort of like, all right, we're thinking about like, oh, protect ourselves from Ivan or like fully try to restore him, which is all, like both have their own level of danger, right? Because Ivan can become, as we'll probably see, a further danger down the line. But you also want to believe in like restitution and trying to help people. And I think like what's very interesting is like you kind of mentioned it between like the youth and the augments versus the Elboreans, is that kind of is the show being like, and I think Marla said something to the effect of like, this is how it's supposed to be, of like, oh, they're for the younger people, they won't have as much of this ingrained philosophy in them, that they are willing to sort of be able to reach out and break down their beliefs a little bit more easier and create that like melding of cultures that the Federation kind of represents in a much more earnest way, rather than something that's a lot harder for Khan specifically, but also like Delmonda presumably a little bit as well, to sort of understand Khan's perspective. So I think that's like that's what I love. That's again, this is like why I'm really loving this show, because it gets at that core Star Trekian ethos of like,
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek is always about creating that synthesis about like logic versus emotion, community versus individual, like where we do we find that synthesis, and I think that's just a core Star Trekian theme.
Hawk, what did you think of the self-sacrifice Elboreans? Because your team, I don't trust them either.
Well, I mean, we got some new information about them, that they weren't just out there exploring and that they were actually fleeing like their
Mm-hmm.
previous world and that, because
That's why I don't trust them.
for some reason, like a race of telepaths couldn't get
Wow,
along.
you don't trust refugees, Giraffe? Wow.
Yes, exactly.
But they
Hashtag
come from
cancel giraffe.
they're a telepathic race, and apparently, like they were living among others and that whose values were in contradiction of their own, and they decided to leave. I found that very interesting, and it's like first kind of indication that okay, we're not getting the whole story about them yet. But other than that, there is like everything they've done so far has been like to establish trust, right? They are fighting as hard as they can for this alliance, especially Delmondo, you know, creating the ship, letting Khan in on the plan and everything. I don't think he was he got a little worried there when like the other Eldorians were telling like the other augments about it. It's like it would you know I don't know. There's a lot of
Everybody wanted to control the narrative,
yeah,
and
exactly.
Joe went
It's like,
above his
how
head.
much
Yeah,
information do you release? And that's something we've seen like in previous episodes and that,
yeah,
the story, the stories about
Mhm.
what's happening and, what happened to people, how did they die, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, um, we mentioned earlier about how like a lot of there's a lot of erosion around like, the faith of Khan, that these augments have in Khan. We see it, we've seen it in Ursula, going
Ivan.
back as far as like, the Enterprise incident when he said he did that out of reflex.
Mhm.
It's like
Yes,
first time we
yes,
heard her say like, he made a mistake, because
yes.
the other augments and that, yeah, they've all been their current view of Khan is still shaped around tragedies and that Wyatt losing his father. Ivan basically, their relationship is done. Um, but yeah, I see that whole generational story playing out too. It's like how like the young people interacting with the Elboreans, and that's that's a representative of the future in that. But like Khan and Ivan are still the past, and it's like in direct conflict of it, and that they don't like the change.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
I think that it is interesting to me how I keep thinking that everybody has an agenda inside of the agenda. Like I knew that
Like a
Khan now.
Romulan.
Yeah, I think like a Roman. What do you want from me?
People
I
can just be earnestly, kind, Giraffe.
I think that Khan is not that stupid. I think he likes imagination, but
Mhm.
I think it's good having plan A, B, C.
Oh, yeah, I think he's not incorrect for not fully trusting them, but
Mm,
I mean that's just being a good leader. You should have some backup plans in case things fall through, regardless. But like I think that it's coming more out of like his desire to like assert his like individualist identity rather than like a desire to be like, well, just in case we don't trust them, you never know. Like I think they're like that's where it's really coming out of. Like he shouldn't fully be like, all right, all my eggs in this basket, I trust them 100%. There should be some reservation. But I mean, this is the guy who was like, my first instinct was murder them all and take what they have. And I think that that's still what's being
Well,
reasserted.
I also think that in the situation of Seti Alpha 5, Khan knows that without us versus them, there is no really anything linking the augments together.
Mm-hmm.
Because on Earth, they were able to do all this because it was a us versus them. And now on Alpha 5, that's just them. So recreating a us versus them with the Elboreans
Oh
would
yeah.
have solved the problem of dissension.
It was the same
But
thing that you had with the slugs earlier on in the season,
yeah,
where he's like, "Oh, good, there's an enemy." Like, yes, I don't think he like thought it was good that the people died. Obviously, he had that whole storyline there, but like, I think it was very helpful in the sense of like, yes, there's an enemy without that I can assert my dominance over.
mhm. And I think once this was over, he shifted towards the my legacy,
Mm-hmm.
my empire, and we're gonna do something all together that is going to defy the laws of like the humans and something like that. But I do think that it is interesting for me that whole ship. I like how the show keep putting new plot points out there that makes me be, oh, what are they gonna do with this? And
Mm-hmm.
we know by like one line of Rosalind Lear that Delmonda survived City Alpha 5. We know this for a fact.
Do we know this for a
Ish.
fact? Because
Yeah,
Yeah, she says
Tuvok
I
questions
know.
that story, doesn't he?
Tuvok thinks she's lying, but I think she's lying about something else that I
Oh,
put in the
I
log
know.
line.
I think we both agree on we know what the lie is, but like I don't know if think we know for a fact that Delmonda survives though.
She says she got the recording
Yeah,
of Marla from a
which I don't
review of
believe
Delmonda.
actually. I don't
Yeah,
believe it.
actually,
I
now
call
that I'm
bullshit on that.
thinking about it, oh boy.
Oh, you think it's a lie?
I mean, do you want me to
Yeah, yeah, go
position? I
ahead.
mean,
That's why we're
without this
paying
might be.
you and not paying you.
I mean, my presumption was maybe I missed something, but my presumption was that Lear is likely Marla and Khan's child.
Yeah, that's
Then
the
she's
only
the one
way.
that escaped the planet, and she's just had these recordings her whole life. Like she's never like she just had them. Like Delmonda never gave them to her. She just had them from childhood and has come up with this story of Delmonda surviving to be like, well, just justifying it or whatever. I don't necessarily like Delmonda. Like that's not necessarily saying Delmonda didn't survive. We know 3 people can fit on that, like the ship.
Or actually,
So four
yeah.
people can fit on the ship. So like maybe Delmonda survived, but my belief is likely it was Lear and maybe some other Elboreans or something like that, but not Delmonda. And that this story of like Delmonda giving her this stuff is just a concoction that she had to like give herself plausible deniability to Sulu and to Tuvok.
Interesting. See, I went right into this. I was like, Delmonda survived. Good for them. Hot
Yeah,
on the
I don't think
heels.
I earnestly do not think that Delmonda survives this. No, not at all.
Why though?
Because I think that's more interesting, right? Like in numerous levels of like Delmonda dies and like the only one that gets away is Lear and maybe a few other like a couple other Elbor, like they're like two Adam and Eve from both civilizations, whatever, like a boy and like Lear and another kid and two of the Elborians survive, but it's not the actual leaders.
Paulo.
Yeah, and also it would work well as a reveal in the story of like we already know Tuvok is questioning Lear's story, so like next episode, let's say, because we have what 2 episodes left, and the next episode it's like Delmonda gets killed. Yeah, next episode Delmonda gets killed, and then that puts in the listener's mind of like, wait, then that means Lear's story is 100% a lie. Where does this actually go from? And then the finale it reveals like, oh, she's actually Khan's kid. Like I just think like both narratively and like what the show is kind of going for, I think both it works better.
Hawk, what do you think?
It just makes so much more sense now. It's like there was a point I was listening to
You
this
didn't
because
think she was the
I didn't
daughter?
think you know what, you brought it up like a couple episodes ago that you were pretty sure that she was the daughter of Khan and MacGyver's. I was thinking, okay, they could do that, but listening to these last 2 episodes and that makes so much more sense. Yes, we only have her word for it that she got the logs from Delmondo,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, Tuvok questions her whole story, and like she's obsessed with like figuring out Khan's legacy, despite all the stories of what the Federation tells about her, which like would make sense if she's Khan's kid.
It also like not just she's not just obsessed with this. It's like she confessed that her postdoctoral thesis was on augments and that the rights that were stripped away from them, and that being citizens of the Federation. Also,
an oblong reference to Laan and Una there too. An oblique reference to them. But,
yeah. Let's jump to my point about Rosalind Lear, because I feel like we all want to just speak about Rosalind Lear. We'll revisit the pregnancy in the end.
Oh man, so much to say about that. Yeah.
But okay, so we don't agree on the Rosalind Lear version of events, right? Everybody agrees that she's lying.
And I love. Sorry, just to say, I love the fact that Tuvok makes clear Vulcans can lie. Many don't like it. What a wild thing! What a wild, shocking thing for a Star Trek writer to understand in the year of our Luigi 2025.
And that their aversion to liars makes them like very, resonant to when they hear a lie, right?
Take note, Strange New Worlds writers. Take note.
I love that show has like put out there 2 things that I truly deeply have problem with: the Vulcan do not lie, and also the fact that the ship always knows where you are and they can just ping you at any moment. I always thought it was fucked up, and I am very happy this show is agreeing with me on this. But yes, Rosalind Lear is a very interesting character, and I feel like I've had the suspicion she was Marla's kid for 2 or 3 or 4 episodes. I don't remember.
Yep. There's an expression that goes around the show quite a bit. Giraffe was right.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel it's just very well brought. First of all, like the name Rosalind Lear. So I'm not a Shakespeare connoisseur, but there's a lot between like Rosalind and the last name Lear. I feel that it is very interesting name in itself. But in this episode, we really see that her study is not only forensic; it's devotional. It, she has been mourning that story, not just studying it. There's something very, very emotional for her in this story. That's why she is bucking so bad at Sulu. That's also we also see her trying to calm herself when Tuvok confronts her and tells her that he knows she's lying. Um, she is also maybe slowly rewriting the history then, from that very studious historian, scientist. Um, we're not certain what's her goal anymore. Like, do you think she's still a
Mm-hmm.
scientist, or do you think she's a myth keeper at this point, here to bring
Mm.
up the legacy of Khan?
I honestly think like that's gonna be the final decision of the show of what she's going to be, because I think she is right in like I think her whole pursuit this whole show has been correct in that like we should study someone like Khan to understand him, like Sulu's dismissal, like coming from a place of trauma, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
of like, oh, he's a villain, we should be afraid of him. And it's like there's a level of like Sulu's correct and like we should seek to like vilify ideology like Khan, but we also should understand where it comes from and not just like sort of put it as this like myth of like, oh, it just comes out of nowhere, because it's what we do with like the Nazis, right, where it's just like today was like, oh, the Nazis are just pure evil that just came out of nowhere and is so unique and so special in its villainy that we like can just like put it off on that, instead of being like, no, the Nazis in many ways were products of their systems and like the incentives that like created that ideology. So we should understand why it got there, lest we fall back into it again. Cries. Um, but like, so like we should. And so I feel like her pursuit is a good and earnest one. But I think ultimately at the end, because she has this like potentially personal investment, I think the question will be, how will she resolve that cognitive dissonance of like understanding that her dad, yes, was a complicated man, but was ultimately one who chose to pursue this ideology of authoritarianism and hurt others. Like there's more complexity behind that decision than just he's a bad guy, but like ultimately he did make that choice. And how is she going to wrestle with that, like that path there of like, he is a bad guy, but there is more nuance to why he is a bad guy. And you can just sort of like put him up as the great man of history and be like, he was a great man, he made some mistakes, but he was a great man. But or you can like sort of end it in a different way. It's kind of reminds me a lot of like this is just something that's been fascinating. Giraffe, because you've read this, that I've written this, but like Gene Roddenberry. If you actually look into some of the stuff that I found about him, he actually weirdly had a fascination with Hitler. In a lot of his like work, because he was sort of like, well, Hitler was a bad guy, but like he was also a product of a system, but also he wanted to make things better and do better things. Like I think that's some bullshit, but it is this sort of like veneration of like the the like system and this idea of this utopian vision versus like the actual like what the mechanisms of that utopia actually are. Are they enabling people or are they grinding people up? And so I think like there's an interesting sort of parallel there between like Gene Roddenberry's weird fascination with Hitler and Lear's sort of focus on Khan that I think is kind of fascinating.
Talk.
Where are we on this question again?
I know
mean,
I kind of went all around. There's just so much with Lear
that's
in my
okay.
Yeah,
head.
I was
Yeah.
interested in
do you
all
think
of it.
that if Rosalind Lear is indeed Khan's daughter, which we're pretty sure she is, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's she is emotionally invested in this, but I still don't discount that she is, in functioning as a true historian in that. And she's just more interested in finding out the truth about this than most people are. We know Sulu, doesn't even want to go there, right? This is why he's got Tuvok watching her and that, and like putting all those security measures in place, mirroring her logs, which is like was kind of crazy to me, because they
Are we surprised though?
no, like I said, this is probably like how Tuvok got interested in security in the first place,
Yeah.
right? Because he seems like a very adept at it at this point. um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I still believe that she is working out of a place of trying to, study this. She does like a postdoctoral on augments and that. So yes, this is, and despite her personal connections and that, there is still much that needs to be explained. And this, these logs are the source of that. It's her dogged determination is not just purely emotional. I think she is genuinely interested in the truth.
I I I don't know that I believe that.
But I mean, but here's my thing is like, what is truth, right? Like I earnestly believe that everything is like relative and interpretable. Like I think I like that's why we have historians, right? Like
Mhm.
people interpret the past and put it into its context, and also like there's many different facets of looking at things. So like I think her project is a good one. How she will perceive and interpret the project, I think, is going to be filtered through many things, like her being have an emotional attachment to it or not. And I think I don't like, and I think that that's fine. I'm just sort of curious to see how it's ultimately going to be resolved. It's such a I think it's so fascinating. That's why I think like this
I think
context is fascinating.
my problem comes more from the fact that when we started talking about this podcast about Khan, we were, oh, this is great that they are revisiting in the story 30 years later when we see that Sulu, for example, has such an emotional attachment. He's not able to process the truth with quotation mark, but like the facts, the event, right? He has too much grief about it.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want Kirk to be questioned because Kirk just died basically for him like 10 years ago maybe, right?
I think
So
Like
it's
4 months, like
yeah, it
it's
was
4 months.
more
like
Oh
recent
yeah,
than
months
that.
yeah.
after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's very recent. Everybody is very raw, right? And it's a hard way to do an historian work when everybody is too close to the subject because you have too much emotion. And so at the beginning of the podcast, we're like, "Oh, this is great. Lois Allen Lear is somebody external. She wants to study the facts." But then slowly we learn that she has the ultimate connection to it, right? That
Mm-hmm.
that's her mother and that's her father, and that somehow she was born on Seti Alpha 5, and somehow she was brought out with that ship. And we don't know how much she knows about that story, right? Because Delmonda said that yeah, they found the logs into a wreckage or something like this. So we know that there's lies. We don't know how much she knows about her own story. And also, if she does know who she is, then she has an ultimate motivation to actually study it, which makes her an unreliable
Yes.
Yes.
narrator in that story.
But this is Tuvok's role, right? Like
Yeah.
Tuvok seems to be the negotiator between these two different ideas. Like he recognizes that Sulu has a bias here, and
Hmm.
even he goes against Sulu in these episodes,
Yeah.
which is interesting. But obviously he doesn't fully trust Lear either. And so I think Tuvok is again meant to be that like synthesis, right? Of like someone who's so traumatized to just hate Khan and cast him as a villain versus someone who has every reason to try to want to put Khan in a more positive light. And Tuvok can kind of be that like synthesis of those two ideas.
I'm gonna add one point to this that I just forgot.
Oh boy.
Ah, Jesse.
Sorry, I cut you off. Apologies. I'm so sorry.
No, it was really interesting and really important. I don't
It
know, Hawk.
was go
As you
back
wanna...
go back go back to Tuvok. His role in this. She's an unreliable
Oh no,
narrator.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry, Hawk. I'll take it back. I'll give it back to you in a second. But also the problem is that when she's gonna publish, because she wants to publish, right?
Mm-hmm.
She wants it to not be under Federation, like, um, jail and revealed to the people. The problem is that it's gonna be revealed through those log that she is Kali. She is Khan's daughter. We suppose, right, in the story. That also is detrimental to her goal of making Khan stories known. Because if I have, I don't know, the daughter of Napoleon, like writing a whole thing about her
Mm-hmm.
dad, but saying it's not my biography, it's not my memories, it is my historian work, I would have a tendency to be like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe somebody else should have done that. So, and also the fact that she worked so much on augment law and everything that the Federation does, I think makes her in need of like very strict peer review. If
Oh
she
God, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
that. And I think that's where Tuvok is indeed an interesting counterpart to this, and
Yeah,
an
yeah.
interesting, like, added forced peer review.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking more like the function of the story, right? Like what like all of this in the story is like some level of just justification to have this kind of narrative. Like we need someone who needs to pursue this. So like I think in terms of what the story's trying to get us to think about is like what are these biased motivations, and Tuvok can be the consensus. But like on a literal level, yes, please, like if this woman came out and like wrote the book on Khan, like here's the authoritative real story of Khan, and then we learn like, oh, it was actually written by Khan's daughter and she never disclosed that and she knew that, then I would be like, okay, yeah, no, fuck this. We've had examples of very biased, biographies and things like that, or
Absolutely.
biographies throughout history. So like, yes, but like in terms of a storytelling function, I think like that's the sort of like the themes that the show is kind of wanting us to sort of wrestle with.
Hawk, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, knowing that does make her an unreliable narrator, and that, and possibly puts a bias like on any potential to like tell this story in some sort of media form, right? But if anything, like we do realize that there is way more to the story than the Federation was willing to let on, and because she's related in that, it does make her a dogged advocate for finding out the truth in that, no matter the scars of it.
She's
Yeah.
also shooting herself in the foot, honestly, because she's herself saying that even people with trace augment DNA have had a lot of issues with Starfleet.
Mm.
And if she's the daughter
Oh
of
my
Khan,
God. Yeah,
that is not
Khan's daughter.
trace. Like, you know what I mean? But good for her. I'm looking forward to know how that's gonna go.
Like,
Um,
she could wind up on her own Botany Bay at the end of this. I don't know.
I don't know,
Bring
but
bring her into a Star Trek show so we can have another Khan descendant in a series.
well, we also see that she has issue, like, controlling herself here and there,
Yeah,
Mm,
which
yeah.
is interestingly woven into the story. But
Which I like. Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, I like it. Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely one of the thread that I'm looking forward for episode 8, 9, because
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be, I think, the big reveal that we already know. But now let's talk about the pregnancies.
Oh.
Uh,
Oh.
I want to preface by saying that I've talked about pregnancies in sci-fi with Jesse a lot. This is a weird sentence to say, but
No, we talked about that. I mean, I'm writing up. There's a piece that I'm been meaning to write for my channel for a while about reproductive futurism, and how it pops up in so many things. I mean, fantastic. The recent Fantastic Four movie is a great
Ooh,
example of
yeah.
it. Yeah.
yeah, I think that we've seen a lot of, like, pregnancies as the legacy of the male hero,
Mm-hmm.
being put as a plot point in a lot of sci-fi. So the Fantastic Four, Andor, the spoiler, sorry, but the latest season of Doctor Who.
Arguably Squid Game, if you've seen the season
I've
finale of
not
that.
seen
it's
it, but yeah,
it's
I've heard of it.
I won't spoil with that, but yeah, arguably it's a very similar thing going on there. So
So it's all about the main male character dying, but having the legacy of a child that is not educated by him.
well, it's not even just, I mean, that is often the case, but like allow me to put on my philosophy cap for a second. Queer philosophy cap. There's this wonderful philosopher. Do I have the book on hand actually? I do not. No, I do not.
Jesse
It's in the
has
other room.
piles of book
I have
downstairs
literally like
in
that's
her
my
home.
pile of research
I
right
am
there.
not kidding. The last time I went to the bathroom, you had two piles of book.
I have books all over the place. But I don't have the book on hand, but there's this wonderful book called No Future. I forget the subtitle, but it's by a queer philosopher named Lee Edelman, who positions this idea of like reproductive futurism, which is in our culture, we have this veneration of the concept of the child, like capital T, capital C, not actual like children, but like the concept of the child is this like thing that we must sacrifice for. So we have all these ideas like, oh, think of the children. The children are a future that everyone, even regardless of what ideological like stance you have, like focuses on. And what it does is always about like protecting our future through the children, but usually it is often done to just continually reproduce our present day, to say like, oh, we want to continually have a child who is just like us, who is going to end up like reproducing the same systems and same world that we are going to exist within. So the child becomes this like symbol of continuance, symbol of like, again, legacy, but legacy into like reproducing these same systems.
Yeah.
And what Lee Edelman argues is that like queer people as a like is like a philosophy, we kind of rupture that idea because we choose ourselves. We choose to like live in the now and not live in a future that is just an endless production of the the current systems, but like saying like, no, we are a negation of that. And there's criticisms of Lee Edelman's work, of like his work, where it's like some, you don't like think about queer people choosing their own children, or like queer people having their own future. They're just a negation, which like other queer theorists have built upon. But that's the ultimate concept, right? Concept. So like when I look at this story, and like I love the idea. I like Lear as she's positioned in the future of this story as like a historian with the bias looking on the past, but within the present of the story, it's this hyperfixation of like a guy's focus on like his legacy through a child, which makes sense. But my issue with it comes down to how Marla is presented within that, in that she literally gets killed in this like stupid way where she's just like in her pregnancy pool and attacked by eels. And then it becomes like this question of like, oh, do we kill her or save the baby? And it like she can't be saved. And it's just like this sacrifice of this woman to then focus on this conversation about a man's legacy and how she is positioned. And Marla just becomes a vehicle for like Khan's story, and then the child becomes like this symbol of like what's Khan's legacy. And Lear as a character ends up becoming this like symbol of like what's Khan's legacy, what's he leaving behind. And it's just so frustrating to me because like Marla was so well done in this show. Like I think she's so fascinating, and I think she like challenges Khan in such interesting ways. And yes, we did know she had to die, but I would have much rather her die in a much more interesting way, either of her own choices or of Khan's terrible choices.
Or
But
it could be a lie.
yeah, well, I mean, that she's
Like
dead.
it could have been like we all know that she's dead just because a Nogman says
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
Khan's wife died.
Yes.
That's basically what we know. But the thing is that, and we talked about it earlier when we were reviewing, Khan is kind of a petty bitch when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
this. Like betrayal, like Ivan is dead to me, right? You're gonna go and you're gonna die and you're dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would have imagined something similar with Marla, where she would take the kid and like refuse the influence of Khan on the kid, and then
Mm-hmm.
the wife of Khan would be
Yeah,
dead.
I mean,
You know?
there's so many options, right? The least interesting option to me is what was done here, though, right? Like
I
it's that
agree.
she just dies so we can have this like other conversation, because it's clearly like her death is just like a plot point just to position us into like having a question about like, oh, is can Khan still be a good man now that he doesn't have his conscience as represented by Marla on his shoulder? How, and also now she is like literal like vehicle for his like legacy. Like she's literally just a brain dead woman there to produce his child now. And I
Yeah.
think like that is just such a like disappointing way to use her character. Like in like we can come up with like 50 billion different scenarios for it, but I just feel like this is the least interesting one and falls right into that like reproductive futurism, like child as symbol, woman as secondary. It's about reproducing these like concepts of legacy, and specifically focus on like male and heteropatriarchal legacy, and whether or not there's a conversation in there like whether or not there can be change, but it's still
Mhm.
focused on like change through male legacy, which I very and heteropatriarchal legacy, which is very frustrating.
Huck, what did you think of?
Which
Actually,
philosopher do you want to bring up, Hawk?
I,
Huh?
I
How
don't
many
want to,
books
before
do
I
you got?
talking about reproductive futurism, but I want to say that I want to talk about the pregnancies in that outline, because for me it was interesting that we had that parallel between Mado
Mm-hmm.
losing the like like having a miscarriage, right, from having that tunnel collapsed on her.
Yeah.
uh and so we have Mado with no child, and then we're gonna have the child, bring me the child, with no mother, right? There's an interesting like parallel of whose life is taken, whose life
Mm-hmm.
is corrupted, who's given the right to survive in some way. And I thought it was an interesting parallel with the idea of naming the child Kali, which is the goddess of creation but also death. This is a very complex goddess. I am not versed enough, but the show explains it very well. um that binds this whole story in a kind of a central paradox of who gets to live, who gets to die, and that some need to die for some to live, which is also the sacrifice of the Elborean. There's so many things here. What
And
did you think of like this? What happens to Marla? Were you surprised? I cried. I cried so bad in my car stuck in LA traffic.
yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. It was a terrible way for her to go out, but I mean, it's all about. There was an interesting parallel between her and Nato in that, because for me, I always thought it was going to be Ivan. I thought this was going to be what, like, how Ivan went out and that he was going to kill Marla and that because of her influence over Khan and how she was changing Khan. I thought that's where it was going to head in that. And
Which would have been more
it
interesting.
would have been more
I don't
interesting,
I don't
right?
know if I like that
But,
better.
the fact that it was just like another eel in that. But I mean, for Matto, it was a cave in. It's just, I think they were trying to say, like, it's like, the nature of this world and that is just like, there's no one to blame, These things just happen in that because they're on this terrible, terrible place and that, with the shrinking options, right? Um, as
Yeah,
far
the dying planet doesn't let anybody anything be born here, kind of.
No, exactly. And it's like, with Kali, it's like not just like, the symbol of like destruction and creation and that. Like I actually had to look this up, but like Kali also represents like transcendental knowledge, liberation, and is known as the mother of the universe, So it's like on one side, Khan chose this deity of destruction and that, that was also represented like the hopes that they had for this child, right?
Mhm.
Liberation from this terrible world, knowledge beyond what he's capable of learning or willing to learn, and mother of the universe and that, wanting to send your child out into the stars and that, because MacGyver's and that, but as a Starfleet officer, knowing what's out there in the universe, and like, thinking about like, what the future for this child is going to be like, would really want to have had her child have that seat on that ship. And I think Khan in some way did too, right? This was his legacy, whether it's just genetic or, something, of him passed down beyond like just his genes, like who he was. This
Mm-hmm.
These are the questions I think they're trying to ask.
I think also the child becomes a part of Marla because that's what she tells him dying, like I will be with you when she takes her first step, when she
Mm-hmm.
laughs, when like I hated that part. I'm gonna be honest, like I really did not like it.
That's
I
okay.
I I like yeah, I feel that women, brain dead women used as like
Incubator for baby.
incubator is hitting a little bit too close
Mm.
lately. A little bit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
these are things that people are actually doing right now. So,
Fortunately, everything I watch nowadays and that it just seems to hit so,
so I was like,
what's fiction and reality anymore? I don't know.
I like that it was the choice of Marla, at least that she has something to say. She's not just brain dead and they just all decide to keep her alive, like hooked to machines because the child must leave. But I I didn't like how it happened. I
No.
agree that
It's
it was
so
just
forced. It's
stupid.
yeah.
Like the eels are coming out of nowhere, and I was so shocked. Like it really took me like, out when I was listening.
Yeah.
I was like, "Wait, what? What
No,
is
no.
she eaten by the eels?" Like I didn't even know. Like so. I imagine like eels like in water. I didn't even think it was the same eel that the one in the desert. You know what I mean? It took me a second to be like, oh, the parasite. Yes, forgot about this. So
It's
I
true.
Yeah, I thought it was just like water eels,
Yeah.
like some weird eels. I was like, cool, they found food, But I thought that as much as I know we need something like it's a tragedy, right? They're all gonna die somewhere or another, and we have to cry about it. I felt that they did Marla dirty.
Yeah.
Honestly, that they just did her dirty. It. I know they need to finish the show. There's 2 episodes left.
Is there
Mm-hmm.
two,
Uh,
or is it just one more after this? I can't.
Two, I think.
Oh, there is
two,
Right?
two.
eight, and nine, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nine
Uh,
episodes total.
Okay.
but I felt like there were so many other ways to make Marla still die or disappear and still have her not be just an incubator. Literally she could have died giving birth.
Yeah.
And I would have, I think, like that better. Even if I would not have like that, I would like that better.
Yeah, I know.
um
The one thing the show has done is given us such a great character arc for like someone who was just a one-off character. Wasn't even included in Wrath of Khan. All the way back to Spacey, but it's been the writing for her has been incredible.
yeah, I don't know. I'm with Jesse. I'm a bit. I'm. It's the only thing I've not liked in that show for like since now basically, and I do think that maybe it's also my own vision as a woman that that would be the last thing I would anybody to do to me.
Yeah,
The fact that she surrenders so fast to no, just kill me but let the child leave. I don't have children, so maybe that's like hormones talking and you really want your child. I suppose it's so, but I felt it was so I don't know, a trick out of a hat of all the books I've read. You know what I mean? It was not original, and also I would have liked something better for Marla. I think I'm
yeah.
going around because I'm very frustrated by
Yeah, I mean, like
that
when
book.
it gets down to it, and that, yes, it's like you always kind of go to that thing about nature, and that the nature, when in order to survive, pushes like all its nutrients to and whatever it can to provide for the baby. There was a discussion about altruism in one of the episodes, and that, and not I can't remember the line. It was altruism can be selfish in its own way. I don't know, but yeah. As far as like nature, it makes sense. But as far as like in defining this character in that, no, it's terrible writing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just it's one of those things where I feel like when I look at something like this, because I even look at the people writing this, and we obviously have why am I blanking on names? Oh my god, help me. Who wrote this?
Oh,
Oh, Kristen Beyer and David.
Kirsten Beyer, yeah, Kirsten
Yeah,
Beyer, who I really like. I actually really like Kirsten Beyer a lot. So like I look at a decision like this and it just feels like we've been talking about there's like a lot of plot going on and it's just like,
mhm.
oh, we need to kill Marla, so like, oh god, we'll just do that, you know what I mean? It just feels like they have, and the show is so good and has so many ideas, it just feels like, oh, we need this thing to happen, so let's come up with a really quick way to do it. And I'm like, that could have used some more time to like bake, but it's just one of those like, oh, we'll quick and easy use this trope to like get to where we want to go. And I mean, that happens. Like every story is going to use some level of tropes, but there's just some that, like, especially given the day, I'm just sort of like, do we have to do that one though? Do we have to do that one though?
That's yeah. I think that's my position. It's more like what I could do without in this day and age is one pregnant woman being an incubator for the child of the man that legacy must like
Mm-hmm.
go on. I'm just yeah.
yeah.
I would love to know what they thought about this and like what was
You
their
want you
rationale.
just secretly we all wanted Marla and the baby to just survive and like live in isolation.
Yeah, I do think there were more interesting ways to do it, and
Yeah,
also, but maybe they were less shocking, and they were going for
Mm-hmm.
something that is kind of shocking. The point is that we're talking about it, and we had reaction to it, so
yeah.
yeah. Uh, so let's start wrapping up these 2 episodes. For me, those 2 episodes were perfect to review together because
Mm-hmm.
every single symbol, every single theme in those two episodes just doubles back on itself. You had the ship that is a hope made out of wreckage. You have the pregnancies, right, and the miscarriages and death, life from death. You have Ivan's exile, mercy through death, or death through exile. One or the other. Lear's research, grief, creating meaning and hope maybe for her. They're not really like portrayed as opposites in the show, but more they are intertwined together. They go one with the other, like the yin and the yang, right?
Yeah.
Mm,
The planet is dying, but it's all about the birth of a kid. Um, Hope is the only thing that exists against despair in these two episodes. What for you portrayed like? What is the best moment for you when it comes to those weird symbol backing on each other?
mm.
Which was the one that had the most meaning for you? We're doing a group therapy. You signed up for it.
I mean, for me, the thing that I like about this, and I've kind of said it earlier, but it's something like I focus a lot about in like my writing on Star Trek, is this idea between like different size creating a larger synthesis and having like this conversation creating something greater. So like these conversations on consensus and how that happens both overtly and naturally. And like we talked about it also. I talked about it overtly with the consensus stuff with Delmonda and Khan, but also between Lear and Tuvok and Sulu, and like the conversations of these cultures, the conversations between like Ivan even representing something versus Marla, and Khan sort of being like an interesting synthesis of that as well. Like that's these like different things are always just core to Star Trek to me. Going back all the way right to like Kirk and Spock and McCoy, with like, you know, the three of them sort of creating this ultimate synthesis that leads to Spock's ultimate arc throughout the whole series, leading to the unification of Vulcan and Romulus and Navarre as like a unification of like the synthesis of these two different ideas, logic, emotion, these whole things. Like that's a very core Star Trekian theme to me, and I really really love it coming out here in such a really beautiful way, because I do think that that is just a core Star Trek theme. Um, and I really do love it because it does like feature this belief that like, you know, it is this very like liberalist view, and like capital L liberalist view of like, oh, like we can have this like Hegelian dialectic and come to some greater synthesis in the end of history as we evolve society forward. So like there is a sort of like Western cultural concept in that. But there is something about it too that I think is just like a good humanist kind of way that I really kind of love. So
Hawk.
I mean, I don't know if it's anything specific in it. I think what's always fascinated me is that as people who already know how this story ends, that we're also so fascinated by it. Like, you know, not just its beginning, but how it actually plays out, you know. And I think, you know, that in itself, you know, is like kind of symbolic of like, you know, Star Trek lore, and that it's why they make, you know, potential, you know, they make them do the Kobayashi Maru, you know. It's like knowing that the end is coming is not the most important part in that. It's what you do in between and those moments that, you know, defines you. And I think with this story, you see that play out, you know, over the last like, you know, 7 chapters that we've listened to. It's the struggle, not the end.
Yeah, I think I agree with this. I also, for me, what has been striking, like these last 7 episodes actually, is that everything we see through Star Trek is Khan is a crazed man. Look at him in the Wrath of Khan, like screaming Khan. Like now Kirk screaming Khan. And it's like between these two dudes, basically dig measuring until one dies, right? And I feel that it's a little bit what I see right now all around me, that it's all about, dudes screaming. And that if I decide to look at the bigger picture, I will see other stories. I will see stories of first contact. I will see stories of people enduring. I will see the stories of human ingenuity. I will see stories of escaping a place that is dying and is trying to kill us. And I think there's a lot of like underlying message of hope in this show, despite the fact that we all know it's gonna end up with, you know, Khan and the Genesis and all this. There's actually another story and stories of women that were just not told ever until Rosalind Lear decides to get at it. And I think it's very, I think it's very, I don't know, important for me to hear that story now,
Mm-hmm.
because in the world of Star Trek, it's all about Khan and Kirk, right? But what about Marla? What about Ursula? What about Mado? What about Kali or Rosalind Lear? What about Delmonda? Well, we don't know what the Elboreans are doing, but you know, like, what about the Elboreans? That story was never told, and for me, is more and it's a more important story to be told than the story of Khan by himself. And
Well,
that I
it's
was,
the.
yeah,
Sorry, I interrupted you.
I was gonna say, like, that's where, like, my last question was, where do you think the show is going after that? And
Mm-hmm.
I hope that it's going towards the story of Rosalind Lear and the story of Marla, and not the legacy of Khan.
Mm-hmm. I That's what I mean. It's why I really like the historical aspect of it, like having this conversation textually within the show, because it is this great manifying of history, right? Like
Mhm.
Khan is a great man of history. Whether it goes back to that like Gene Roddenberry thing, right? That I was talking about. Like he focuses on Hitler as a great man of history, like a bad man, but a great man. And our culture's like veneration of these figures to the point of erasing others. Like we even see it in Star Trek's own, text of like the fact that Lily Sloan gets erased from the history of Zephyr Cochrane.
Yeah.
Despite,
Yeah.
all the stuff that we learn is like she's literally like just as important to that as well. And so there's always this contextualizing of like, no, great men, the story of great men is the story that our culture likes to tell to sort of typically venerate straight, like often white, even though Khan isn't white, but straight white cis dudes, to tell that story and erase everyone else around them that they either took from, built off of, influenced, worked with, numerous different things. Same Gene Roddenberry himself did that. He tries to make himself the great bird of the galaxy when he like what Star Trek was made by numerous people: Nimoy, Shatner, Gene Kuhn, DC Fontana, the list goes on. Um, so like, yeah, I think that that's a really cool thing that this show is doing, and it's something that I've been thinking about too. And as right now, of like all these people that get erased from the narrative of history. Like I pitched a comic that I'm working on for an anthology that's about like a trans woman that was erased from history and that lived in the Nazi regime, and like how she is framed throughout. Like it's a just trans woman that lived, in like how many ways she's been framed as like as a figure. Is like, because I found like different historical records and people using her history of like, oh, trans women were perverts, trans women were heroes, trans women were victims, and like it's all these narratives that try to like use her and position her in different ways instead of just her being a person. um and so I think about that, and I think about right now, as you said, Giraffe, too, of like, how are we going to be interpreted by the future? Is me as a trans woman going to be like, oh, well, she lived during this Trump administration right now, so she's going to be remembered as a victim. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you were a victim of this, how sad, or you were resistance, or you were a villain, you were an awful person. Like all these different ways you're interpreted. So I
There's
think that,
also many things that you can be that are not related to
yeah,
what
yeah,
is
what
going
do you
on.
actually, yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. We're all shaped by our context, and we're all shaped by our own, context, and also who we are in many different things. There's many different ways. And so I ultimately hope that that's kind of where the show ends on, in like just wrestling with this complicated thing of Khan and being like, okay, he's a complicated figure, and I think we can still and should still condemn him and what he did, but
Mm-hmm.
he is a complicated figure who is a product of both his own internal struggles, his own mental stuff, and the context in which he lived. And take that and then look at someone like Lear and be like, or like, even Kirk to a degree, or like all these characters that they're wrestling with, and be like, okay, how do we fit within that? How do we see ourselves as a product of this history, this context, and how do we move forward? I think the lazy way to do it would kind of just be like to put it all on like, oh, she's the child of Khan and she can do better. You know what I mean? Like if it ends up being like you're the child of Khan and you
The
can do you
redemption.
choose, yeah, you were the redemption, you prove that something good came out of this. Is like, no, she exists for her own self. She should
Yeah.
understand the history she came from as a kid of Khan and all of these other things that shaped her. But like I hope it's more than just like you're the redemption, you can do better, you can grow, and more it's just like, okay, we've contextualized this man. What does that context add, and how do we think about it?
Hawk, what do you think this show is going?
Honestly, I have no idea. I've been, yeah. I mean, I find it interesting that we talk about the great men of history, and that the word "great" is also attached to the word "killer," and that it just can't be. We talk about great figures in American history, and that like the J.P. Morgans or George Hearst, and that, and they were all killers. So yeah, I am so sad that they went this way with Marla MacGyver's. We all knew she was going to die at some point, but it does
We're
seem
back
to.
at being
But like with
disappointed.
2 episodes to go,
Disappointed.
it does put like a stop on her story, and it's like it's very important to for her story to be told, and hopefully that's more where Lear is going with this. I mean, like the augment, or thing is one thing, and that you wonder, well, how Lear is going to represent Marla in all this. Hopefully it's definitely in the more positive light. I don't know. Like I said, this show has definitely thrown me some loops. I don't know how they're going to end up. I'm surprised it's going to be 2 more episodes. So, we will see.
We will
We will
see.
see.
Okay. Any last thoughts? Speak
I'll
now or be silent until the next episode.
all I will say is I am so glad to have Star Trek that feels very interesting that I can dig into and not just endlessly frustrated with. Like it is nice. And it kind of saddens me a little bit that Star Trek Con seems to not be doing super well. I mean, looking
Yeah.
at the
Yes.
YouTube numbers, it's not doing super great. I mean, even watching, like, we don't have a ton of people in the chat right now. Shout out to the people who are here.
Yeah, hip hip.
Um, like I really hope like everyone who listens to this and listens to Star Trek Con goes out and like proselytizes it, because I really do think it is really, really great. Like there's so much to dig into. Like it's interesting even in the things that I disagree with, because they fit into a larger thing, instead of something like Strange New Worlds, which is just an endless, for me, not speaking for anyone else, but for me was an endless level of like just exercise and frustration. um so like I really hope that this gets the proper viewership it deserves. I'm certainly going, it's over, I'm going to be talking about it myself on my own channel a little bit, but yeah, go out and talk more about
The
it. That's basically what I'll say. It's good Star Trek.
the podcast is doing good because I
Yeah.
think there's not a lot of us like reviewing
Mm-hmm.
this show. So I feel that everybody I've talked to who has listened to it loved it and
Mm-hmm.
is finding it very interesting. I think a lot of people have not listened to it because they don't listen to podcasts because it's
I
like
almost
not on TV on Thursday
Mm.
night, and I'm just like, just put it when you're like Hawk was saying, just put it when like you're doing the dishes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yes.
I also like wonder if like if people are waiting until it's all done, like they will listen to the first episode, oh that's interesting, I'll come back to it, because the first episode did decently well,
Mhm.
at least at the YouTube numbers. And I wonder if like people are just waiting for it to all be finished, but then he will either just forget to come back to it, or are just
Mhm.
waiting. And then I also think like the Con one is such a weird one to have started. I mean, I know they technically did the Star Trek Picard one with Seven and Raffi, which was also really good, but that wasn't given this level of like pomp and circumstance. um and I almost wonder if like Khan was like a bad one to do, and maybe they should have started with something a little bit more nostalgia baity. And because
How is Wrath of Khan nostalgia, baby? What do you
but
mean?
it's not like, it doesn't like, Khan is such a weird one, and like yes, it's nostalgia baity, but in like a weird way. It's where it's not like, you got Sulu there, but he's not like front and center in the marketing. I mean, like this is the area where like I am very much against like overdoing nostalgia in like TV shows, like the main product of a thing. But like in audio dramas, I think that like that's the perfect place to like, okay, let's do an episode of Star Trek Voyager as an audio drama again. Let's go back and do that. Let's do something interesting there, like just explore little things there, because you can get the actors back pretty
But
easily.
there's a
So I think
great
like this would have been
coming
a yeah, I just
There's
think
a
that this
great
should.
homecoming back coming back. Go read it.
Oh,
It's great.
I know. But I'm just saying, I'm just saying more like I feel like this should have been this Star Trek Con feels like it should have been a product of like a more cohesive setup for Star Trek audio dramas, like a Big Finish thing. Like if it Big Finish for Doctor Who, they have a bunch of like audio dramas for Doctor Who, and like Doctor Who does a billion different things with Doctor Who, but I think like they're able to get away with like doing weird one-off things with like a side character from an episode of Doctor Who, because they also do like the bigger ones with like they get the Ninth Doctor back, they do Eighth Doctor adventures, they do ones with David Tennant. And so I feel like they should have probably centered like let's do a Deep Space Nine one, or a Cisco or a Janeway one, or an Archer one, and then do a Con one. And I think that would have probably helped the marketing of this better. So.
I'd be a sucker for a Janeway audio drama with Kate Mulgrew, honestly.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Bring back the Mulgrew.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Hawk, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just agree completely with Jesse. Like, Strange New Worlds for me, it's like production and acting, all great, everything. It's just like the writing was just didn't deliver, for me. And
No, Hawk, you froze.
No, Hawk, come back! He said he didn't like Strange New World and he was silenced. He's back. Is he?
You froze, Hawk.
Oh.
No!
Talshiar is on you. Oh no.
Medium for them.
Oh,
now you're back. You're back, Hawk.
You're back.
You lost you for a second. You lost you for a second.
Talshiar was like, no, you cannot talk
You
bad.
You can't criticize Strange New Worlds.
I don't know where I left off there.
You got cut off at the point where you said that Strange New Worlds, good acting, good everything else, but the writing wasn't there. That's about where it cut off.
Yeah, but with this, the writing is completely there. I know the viewership is down, but this shouldn't seem like kind of a strange format for the series, right?
No, I mean, there's been audio drama. I mean, there's been tons of audio dramas. There's been tons of Sulu audio dramas. Like back in the 90s, they did like 3 or 4 George Takei audio dramas very similar to this. So.
Yeah. What really irks me is like I don't know why it isn't more attractive to Star Trek fans than that, because like with all the issues around Paramount Plus these days and that, and like if you do want to watch like the new Star Trek and that,
it's gonna be cut off by the Tashiar again. He's criticizing Paramount Plus now. What are we doing?
Larry Ellison's watching. He's gonna get you.
But I agree. With so many people canceling their Paramount Plus,
they're so restrictive with it too. In that, I mean, like we've got Paramount Plus and that, but we've got it for 2 devices only in the house, and that's it. So I'm not even mobile with it. This is it's released free every week. It's like, come on.
Exactly. Go listen to Star Trek Con. Before you do that, it's time for our mailbag. We actually have 2 mailbag today. Whoop whoop. Oh, Hawk is going fast into his phone. I know that Eric is listening, so I don't think you need to text him, but text Eric anyway.
Yeah, I already texted Eric, so
we have a system in place when I'm in charge. As you see, I'm in charge-ish. Jesse, do you see the mailbag? Do you want to take the first one?
Yes. Every episode, I think I can't be more irritated by Ivan, and every episode I am proven wrong. I also keep thinking they're going to reveal what the heck City Alpha 5 6. Sorry, City Alpha 6. This is City Alpha 5. Why the heck City Alpha 6 exploded, and instead there's a brand new mystery to unravel. Who exactly is Rosalind Lear? I guess I'll have to stay tuned to find out. Yeah, it is weird we never get an explanation for City Alpha 6. Maybe that's the Elboreans. Maybe they blew it up.
I blame the Elboreans.
That might be what it is. So that would actually be a good way to do it, where it's like, oh, they blew it up, so like it's kind of their fault, but they're still earnest in everything they want to say. So it would be a way to kind of like thread the needle between the two of us, Drew.
I like that.
Yeah.
Hawk, can you take NY Ralite?
Sure, NY Rally. I wrote, dying due to a sulfur springs bath is not among the ways I thought Marla MacGyvers would go. Damn them for making me feel any sympathy for Khan. But the most interesting part of the last 2 episodes for me is how Sulu asked Tuvok to spy on Lear. I just watched Flashback last night. It would be interesting if the pod ties Tuvok's disillusionment over the Khan conspiracy into his decision to leave Starfleet the first time.
Oh, interesting. I like this very, very much. Yes. I want to say that Navin Andrews did an incredible job at making me cry. God
Hmm.
damn that man, that beautiful, beautiful man. This is the end of our review of Star Trek Con episode 6 and 7. Next week, we're gonna be back for episode 8, and we're getting so close to the finale. Go listen to the 8th episode real fast. Like, sub, hit the bell. We'll be back next week for episode 8. Live long and prosper, I suppose. Sarcastic Vulcan salute.
Thanks for beaming into our podcast today. If you want to keep the hailing frequencies open, you can subscribe on Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. Like what you hear? Put in a good word with Starfleet and leave us a 5-star review.